Stand by for broadcast.
You're listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations.
Hello, I'm Squadron Leader Peter Lisney, and in this episode we hear from RAF veterans.
I was the old boy at 23. The pilot had his 22nd birthday coming back from one raid, and the gunners, who were only 18, started to sing happy birthday to him on that occasion, and he said, "Forget that, we're not back yet."
We had a guard on the door all the time. I had to have a guard to walk back to the mess. And even in the mess, I was sharing a room with a couple of other girls, and they moved me into a room on my own in case I talked in my sleep.
Learning to land through mist and fog. Beam approach, they called it. Beep, 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 blah, 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 blah. And so that sort of kept you going through the clouds till you broke cover and could land. It was pretty useless, really.
Also, in this episode, we'll reheat a few stories just in case you missed them, and we'll be finding out who is under the hat this week.
What's the best thing about your job?
Definitely the people. They're working with the people.
Hardest part of your job?
Definitely the people.
Find out who is under the hat at the end of this episode. Now, listening to those who served before us can be an inspiration. In this week's Inside Air, Media Officer Flight Lieutenant Mark McKinstry delves into the archive of some of the interviews he recorded with World War II veterans.
Welcome to Inside Air, and an especially poignant episode as we mark the sacrifice of so many at Remembrance. I am Flight Lieutenant Mark McKinstry, an RAF Media Officer, and today we are taking time to listen to the voices of those who served before us. As a media officer, one of the most important aspects is talking to people, sharing their experiences and thereby telling the story of the RAF and what we do. Over the last few years, it has been my absolute privilege to meet many RAF veterans. In particular, I have been struck by the humble way our World War II veterans talk about the incredible role they played across the RAF in such challenging times. Conscious of the march of time, I decided to record some chats I had with a number of veterans from that era. They were keen to tell their stories, and even though most of them are no longer with us, it is important to hear of their experiences and the sacrifices so many made. To begin with, we'll hear from Flying Officer William Mould, who explains why he joined the RAF.
Well, there was a war on, that's right. Yes, there was a war on, that was it. Why did I join the RAF? I don't know. I think an uncle of mine was telling me that if you want to fight, go and join the RAF, because it was after Dunkirk, and so there's not much for the army to do, so there's no point in joining the army.
William was quickly identified as a potential pilot.
Well, they said they wouldn't trust me with more than one engine, I think. I trained in South Africa. It was very enjoyable there. I mean, I enjoyed my training down in South Africa.
After a long trip up from Durban to Cairo in Egypt, and initially flying Kitty Hawks, there was a move to new aircraft and a wider range.
Mustangs, P-51s, North Africa, northern Italy, Yugoslavia, Albania, around the Adriatic Sea.
Joan Jones, ACW, Joan Jones. I was in the RAF and I was a teleprinter operator, and we had the GPO, General Post Office, gave us all the teleprinters that they had in the JPO. They gave it to the RAF, and that's how we got them. And if they set up two in a room, you were deafened, and that's why I'm deaf on that side, you see. And it was a terrible noise, terrible. But that's what we had to do, and we got through to France, and all the secretive stuff went through the teleprinter, you know, and it was fine. But we slept in Nissen huts, of course, which it was all right. I was what was I, 18? You can put up with anything when you're 18. Yeah. Down in Cornwall, I was, of course, when I was down there, Portree, and we were taken up in a bus into the mountains and down again with for the planes and everything, you know. And it was sometimes a bit scary, but mostly not. I never sort of got frightened. I've never been in a plane, would you believe? No, I've never been in a plane. I've never been on holiday in a plane, and I don't want to. But no, it's never interested me being in a plane, which everybody seems to think is very peculiar, seeing as I was all that time in the Air Force.
I volunteered for the Royal Air Force on my 18th birthday. My name is Bernard Morgan, and I served as a code and cipher operator with 83 Group Control Centre, which was a mobile signals unit. The machine that you use for decoding was called a Type X machine, and the keyboard was similar to present-day computers. So if you could type and type swiftly, you could decode the messages and pass them to the air operations officer, and he would then send the aircraft where they had been requested by the Army.
As part of the largest invasion in history, Sergeant Morgan had the opportunity to put his newly acquired skills into operation.
We'd no idea where we were going. Some said it was Norway, some said it was France. We set sail from there. By the Straits of Dover, all radios were closed down because going through the Straits of Dover, we were so near the enemy. And as a result, when we arrived at the Isle of Wight, which was codenamed Piccadilly Circus, the harbour master there pointed out to our captain, D-Day has been put back a day because of the bad weather. But you can't stop here because there's hundreds more vessels coming in, and even though the sea's a big place, they wanted more space. There was that many vessels there. So we were sent off to Normandy. We couldn't operate at all, and we should never have been there because our job could only be done on dry land. So we were anchored 7 miles off the Normandy coast. The battleships were behind us, including HMS Belfast, firing at the Atlantic Wall. They were firing back at the 25-mile line of landing vessels, waiting to go in at the evening tide. Sadly, a lot of the landing ships were blown up because the shells had dropped short, and every landing ship was full of ammunition, and you looked down the line and you could see them going up in smoke. And then when we did land at 6:30 on the afternoon of D-Day, we had a map reference to go to, which was only a mile inshore, and we waited there for another 3 days until a temporary airstrip was laid at Bazonville. We moved near to there to set up our unit, started operating. After 2 days, an American bomber crash-landed on the landing strip, which was only made for small aircraft like the Spitfire, so we were out of business again. But then they soon got it repaired, and then we were in full production. We moved about 5 or 6 miles behind the army, all the way through France, Belgium, Holland, and into Germany.
Ethel Burkitt. I was a flight mechanic. Airframes, not engines. The first time I was right on the edge of the North Sea. When a plane came in, I had to start fixing the broken wings. It was a bit nerve-wracking because it was right on the very edge. I'm very proud of the RAF. I think they did very well. They were fantastic. Very good. About time they showed what the lads did. And the girls, of course. There'd have been a mighty loss without them.
Lancaster bomb aimer Frank Tolley.
Warrant officer. So I joined the RAF in 1940 when I was 19 and was demobilised in May 1946. It was quite good fun, and sometimes you'd be chatting up the girls in a pub, and they would want to know about you, and who is he? What does he do? Him with the B. And he said, "Oh, he's the bomb aimer. He climbs into the aircraft, goes into the nose, lies down, goes to sleep. We wake him up when we get there, and he does what he has to do. Then he lies down again, goes to sleep, and when we get back, we shake him and say, 'Come on, get out. We're back now.'" The navigator, he's never lost. He's just a little unsure of his position, and the pilot, when he gets paid up, all he does is just get his head down and switches on George for it to fly automatically. And the rear gunners, they're a dead loss. Sometimes they've loaded up with blanks, which was all a load of nonsense, but it was all good humour. Yes, things went on quite well. But I was the old boy at 23. The pilot had his 22nd birthday coming back from one raid, and the gunners, who were only 18, started to sing happy birthday to him on that occasion, and he said, "Forget that, we're not back yet." But we just pressed on together until war finished. But we had some dodgy trips, and on one occasion I remember taking off for one raid and landing from the next raid the following night was a total of 31 hours, and during that time our flying time was 18 hours 5 or 18 hours 10 minutes, I forget which. And when we came back from the first one, we were debriefed. Then we went for a meal and to bed. Then we were called up and told there's another briefing at 1400. So go and get your breakfast and see you there. And that was it. That I can well remember. 18 hours. It was quite something, and yet we coped all right. I remember when the war finished, to find us something to do, we had to go over to Italy to bring a dozen troops back for demob. Some of them had been out there for years, and they could come back with us in 12 hours as opposed to, in 2 hours, as opposed to going by land and sea in 3 days. And to relieve their monotony, we took one gunner with us to act as steward, and to relieve them, they could only lie down in the fuselage, but we had them come up 2 at a time, stand behind the pilot and have an explanation of his work and the flight engineer's work. Then they would come into the nose. I would show them how we set up the bomb sights. And it took 3 hours to set up the bomb sight. The pilot, from him I had to get the airspeed, aircraft height, and compass reading. And from the navigator, the wind speed and wind direction that he was using. And I set these up on the port side in a big box which was a forerunner of the computer, and then the bomb sight was ready for use.
One of the veterans I spoke to was operating on Wellington bombers.
Well, my name is Theo Eves. I was a warrant officer, wireless operator, air. That's a WOP AG, and also an air gunner. And while I was in the services, I also qualified as a radar mechanic. I volunteered for the RAF because I wanted to go become aircrew. Well, of course, I'm very fond of the Wellington. I've got a great regard for it. I mean, Wellington was the one that brought us through 35 operations as a crew. We had some spots of trouble, but it always got us back. Well, of course, the war made a dramatic difference, didn't it? At the beginning, we'd just got the very beginnings of flying with, and of course, in the early the Second World War I'm talking about now, there were still Ansons around, there were still biplanes around, there was still the beginnings of flying, really. And the RAF, of course, was using planes like Gloucester Gladiators and so on. And the dramatic change from that to jet engines, of course, towards the end of the war, I mean, it's a remarkable change.
Mr. Stuart Taylor was a flight lieutenant in the RAF. I think it would be the new year, I was sent down for selection. You had to go to a selection centre at Cardington, where they had the big airships, R101 and all that. 2-day job. Exams, interviews, and then selection. So I was selected for training as pilot. It was rather enjoyable, really, because we were in Canada. It was what was called the British Empire training scheme, and we were sent after initial almost school training in training wings in coastal resorts around the south coast and the east coast of UK, hotels taken over. And then you were given 12 hours grading flying in UK. And if you got through that, you were shipped out to Canada or America or South Africa to complete your training. When you got out to Canada, you were sent out. Well, I ended up in Calgary and on Tiger Moths. And halfway through the course, they ditched the Tiger Moths and introduced a monoplane, which was a bit more like a proper aircraft then. If you got through that course, about 30 hours flying, including looping the loop and 1 or 2 things like that, you were sent off either to single engines or multi-engines, and I was chosen for multi-engines. So you went then on to Oxford or Anson's, and another 2 or 3 months flying over Canada, cross countries, night flying, emergency landings, bombing trips, practice, you know. And there were accidents. I lost an instructor. Nice chap, Flying Officer Crouch. I wasn't with him at the time. He was flying with another student. 2 aircraft collided. I plant a little cross for him at Westminster Abbey every year after the cenotaph do. Yeah. I ended up on Prince Edward Island, training for Coastal Command over the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Supposed to be hunting submarines, never saw any. And then I came back to UK. This was January 1944. The troop ship was full of Canadian troops. You know where they ended up 6 months later? The Canadians on Sword Beach, yeah. I just wonder how many of them ever got home again. Unfortunately, the training schemes had been so successful that there was a backlog, and nearly all the big hotels in Harrogate were packed full of aircrew, all waiting to be sent somewhere. And then I ended up in Chester, back on Tiger Moths to do a map reading course, and then up in Scotland on an advanced flying course, learning to land through mist and fog. Beam approach, they called it. Beep, 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 blah, 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 blah. And so that sort of kept you going through the clouds till you broke cover and could land. It was pretty useless, really, but at least we didn't do any damage. Where was I then? I was sent on leave again. I hadn't touched an aircraft again. And eventually I reached an OTU. I thought, Catalinas, you know, the Coastal Command flying boats, or perhaps bullfighters, you know, on coastal raiding and convoy and so on. It was Dakotas. They don't have those in coastal. No, you're in Transport Command, sonny. So that's where I ended up as a co-pilot on Dakotas. Where are we now? We're almost into September. 9 months, yeah. So that was pretty useless, really, against the enemy. But on the other hand, it was all part and parcel of the big D-Day job. And then eventually, of course, we were flying into France and Belgium, because the Normandy campaign was over, carrying troops in, mail, always mail to carry, ammunition, fuel, general dogs' bodies.
Phyllis Felton joined the Air Force in 1939, and after basic training and displaying potential, began to get involved in important work.
Fortunately, I was sent on a cipher course up just outside Oxford, which I passed, and that meant that I then got a commission. And then I was posted down to Coastal Command headquarters at Northwood. And we used to do horrible hours. We did a daytime shift, an evening shift, and then a night shift. So you never knew where you were with sleep. It was just awful. And one of the most wonderful things that happened to me was that there were 3 naval officers who were sort of liaison between Admiralty and Coastal Command. And they used to take it in turns and come down into the cipher office for us to make tea for them. And one night, the senior one came down and he said, "I've been asked to form a special office to deal with anti-U-boat work. And I wondered if you'd like to come work for me." So, of course, I jumped at the idea because no more night duty. And so I worked for Captain Peyton Ward. He had been a submariner in the First World War. And I had a big cork map, really big map in front of me. And I used to have to plot where the U-boats were, because we used to get information having broken the German code, and also plot the convoys coming from America. And then every morning the Commander-in-Chief would come down and they would have a discussion as to which convoys needed air cover most. So that happened every day. And then it was decided that I should be posted to Ceylon to do the same job that I was doing at coastal headquarters. And because the Japanese submarines were being an awful nuisance round Ceylon and southern India, so they wanted me to go over and do the same plotting thing.
You're also quite humble about your time at Coastal Command, because obviously you were mentioned in dispatches and you got an MBE as well.
Yes, well, that was the MBE apparently was for the work I'd done at Coastal Command, because during that period, it was just before D-Day, and I had each command had a big book with all the things that were going to happen on D-Day and all about the timings of various patrols and one thing and another, and where everybody was going to be stationed down on the south coast of England. And this book had to be amended every so often because they had to keep changing their plans because of weather and tides and one thing and another. And so they used to send messages down from Admiralty with the dispatch rider, and because I was in this office only working with Captain Peyton Ward, I was given the task of looking after this book and doing the amendments. And we had a guard on the door all the time. I had to have a guard to walk back to the mess. And even in the mess, I was sharing a room with a couple of other girls, and they moved me into a room on my own in case I talked in my sleep. And so all this was, I was there, excuse me, I was there until about 2 months after D-Day, I suppose. So it was, I remember on D-Day, I remember waking up and hearing these aircraft going all over the... Oh, it was amazing, amazing. And then, much to my complete amazement, about 3 years ago, I had a letter from the French consul saying that it had been decided to give me the Legion of Honor for the work I had done before D-Day.
Wow.
So that was absolutely came out of the blue. I mean, I was just so surprised.
So what was that like on D-Day? Because you were, I suppose, in a slightly fortunate position in that you heard the aircraft going over, but
yes,
you knew where they were going and what
that's
it was
right,
about.
and I knew exactly what they were going to do. And we, of course, were kept informed as to what was happening with the troops. That was happening until I was posted to Ceylon, so of course I didn't know the final bit at all.
LAC Cyril Leake and his daughter Veronica talked about his time as a mechanic based in India.
I worked mostly on decoders on the airframe. Oh yeah, well, it was funny, we were in groups of, we were in 3 gangs, and we shared the 24 hours between the 3 of us. 8 hours on, 16 hours off. So we covered the 24 hours. So whenever a plane came in, it was in somebody's territory, so to speak, and whoever was on dealt with it. And there used to be a mail plane came in once a week. And if it came in on your shift, you used to moan like anything. One mail plane. Read.
When you were working though, Dan, in your shift of work, please don't say you were reading, because that's not very good.
DIs.
What's that?
Daily inspections. They were fairly minute, but you had to be done because
that's where you discover when things were starting to go wrong. Yeah. And then there were I've forgotten what the hourly rate was, but every so many hours a plane has a bigger service until it has a major service, then it goes back to the beginning again. Well, we basically worked on Dakotas because they were the workhorse. They carried 52 passengers, yeah. And that's a lot of troops to transport and all their gear. Yeah. And they had 5 crew, 2 pilots and 3 stewards.
As a media officer, part of our role is to capture and share those memories, not just for today's audience, but for the future. Every time we interview a veteran, it's more than a story. It's a connection between generations. It's about preserving what might otherwise fade. When you sit with them, it's humbling. They don't see themselves as heroes. They just did their job. But those quiet voices carry so much weight, and what incredible experiences they had.
On one occasion, 2 of our bombs didn't go when the bomb doors opened. So the bomb aimer came down and we wondered what we would do, and so we decided that we would cut a small hole in the floor that the bomb aimer decided where it would be, so he could get his hand down and release the bombs by hand. Well, it took quite a while to cut that hole in the floor. It's just like going through solid wood, and all we had a little tiny axe and a knife and so on. We finally managed to get a hole big enough for him to get his hand through into the bomb bay. Then he found he couldn't release them though. He just couldn't done it. So we had to land, of course. We had to close the bomb doors and land with 2 unexploded bombs in the bomb bay. And as I said, I think before, and I've said many times, I've flown very many times in my life, but that was the sweetest and the softest landing we'd ever made. The Ailif, our pilot, who was a farmer's boy, usually thumped it down like circuits and bumps and go home, he'd had enough, But not that time. It was absolutely beautiful. There was a tiny swish, that was all, as we touched the runway. And of course, as soon as we stopped, we all shot out as quickly as we could and ran. And the armourers turned up, because we'd let the armourers know what was going on. We'd let the base know, of course. The armourers turned up to defuse the thing and get them safely out of the bomb bay.
I'd attacked this German biplane, and we were very low down, and of course they could fly much slower than mine, so it always managed to get trees between me and the enemy, you see. Anyway, I eventually, I lost all my coolant. He got a bullet in my aircraft. I lost all my coolant, and modern engines don't fly very well without coolant for very long. So we both crashed actually, and what happened? I don't know. I called it this house. There were 2 or 3 houses there. I wanted to get some sticks to help me walk, with the intention of getting as far away as possible during the night. And they took me in and hid me when the Germans came the following day. And then after that, I got in contact with the partisans who asked me to join them. And I said, well, I wouldn't be much use to you because I could hardly walk. And anyway, I was with him for about 8 days. We had a few little adventures, and eventually got to Randolph Churchill's headquarters. What did he say there? He said, you're very lucky, there's a Russian plane coming in tonight. And, that was the afternoon when I got there. By the few hours, this Russian plane had come in, and there was an American black pilot there too. We came out together, flew back to Italy. Fortunately, the plane was going from Russia to Italy, not the other way. Otherwise, I might be talking to Mr. what's his name in Russia.
Bernard Morgan again.
We received a message in code that the war in Europe would finish in 2 days' time, but you were not to pass any information to anybody. The following day we received a message to say the war had now concluded.
When we asked our veterans what remembrance means to them, their answers were deeply personal and incredibly powerful.
Well, I think the most important day in the military calendar is Remembrance Sunday. That's it. I watch the Saturday night British Legion concert in the Albert Hall, Remembrance concert, and I have to admit I shed a tear. I was telling somebody in the room there over lunch that not a best friend, two best friends rather, Jimmy Hyam was ahead of me at school, but we used to walk home together and things like that. He's at the bottom of the South China Sea in one of the Japanese hell ships, being transported in it and being sunk by an American submarine. And it's now a war grave. That's where Jimmy is. Peter Christopherson, who was a cub reporter on the Lancaster Guardian, I knew at school. He must have been training in Canada at the same time as me, but he was being trained for a radio radar navigator, which they gave them the O brevet with the wing. It was an O, observer. It was the old-fashioned brevet. It was a new trade. They needed them because the Mosquito and the Bullfighter only had 2 crew. One was the pilot, the other one had to be the navigator, the radio operator, and the radar operator. So it was a very skilled job, and he'd been persuaded to do that instead of becoming a pilot. Okay. I was at Harrogate, and he turns up at Harrogate. Embraced one another, didn't know you were blah, blah, blah. So we had a night out, sampling a few pubs in Harrogate, and went home, and that was that. Next day, he wasn't around, been posted. Perhaps 2 months later, I came on leave, went into the office where I'd been a junior office boy, and his auntie worked there. I was in uniform, of course, showing off a little bit. And she came over, she said, Peter's been killed. Killed in action. Those are the 2 things that, you never forget it.
Each veteran we spoke to mentioned comradeship, the bond that never fades.
I mean, the RAF I've always found is like a family. And once you're on the squadron, officially on the squadron, particularly in wartime, it didn't matter what rank you were doing the job, and things, we were just like great friends all round, irregardless of our rank. There's a lot of background in this area, I think, which, and of course there's a lot of people like myself, who served not just in the Second World War, but people who served later in the RAF in various capacities. Sadly, there's been so many wars even after the Second World War finished that we've been involved in as a country. And the opportunity for people to be more aware of what the RAF part is, because it is so important a role in my view. I mean, these days, at one time, of course, British Navy was #1. Still is, I suppose, and the Army is #2. But we were the babies, as it were, the RAF. But I think change may have, in people's perceptions, a change may have taken place in some of their minds since then.
I felt that my manhood was founded on the RAF. When I went in, I was only a lad. When I came out, I was a man. And I think it was the RAF that put me in that position. And I also joined the RAF because I had two relatives who were in the Royal Flying Corps in the First World War, and one carried on into this war. He was a pilot, and the other one was an airframe fitter. And that was one of the reasons why I thought I'd be more suited to the Air Force than the Army. In my opinion, the boys who won the war for us were the Battle of Britain pilots.
I don't consider myself to have been brave. What I did was a necessity. We were at war, and I had to be part of it.
Well, it was, how shall I say? It was interesting. I wouldn't have missed it for anything. Yes, it was important in my life, I think.
No, I didn't talk about it. No, I can remember.
I think you realise that the contribution that you people made a difference to us now.
Well yes, I'm sure it did.
They spoke about the pride in service, but also the quiet moments of reflection each November.
I usually try my best to, in my own small little way, I usually try my best to remember it and celebrate it very much, because I think the saddest thing to me at this age is the fact that people have changed so much. I can't get over the awful envy and jealousy that goes on in this country today, whereas in the war there was nothing like that. Everybody pulled together. Some people had a horrid job, some people had good jobs, but there was never any moaning and there was never any discomfort. People just got on with the job. And I think that's one of the things that sticks in my memory more than anything. And when I think of all those men that lost their lives so that we should be better, and look where we've ended up. Are we any better?
Hearing these stories is a reminder that remembrance is more than a ceremony. It's an act of listening, of keeping their words alive. So this Remembrance Day, wherever you are, take a moment not just for the silence, but for the voices that still carry across generations. We will remember them. My thanks to all the veterans who shared their stories, and to everyone across the RAF keeping their legacy alive. From all of us, thank you for listening and for remembering.
Hi, I'm AS1 Emma Kerwin, and this is Reheat, where we take a look back at some of the RAF stories you might have missed. The Royal Air Force's F-35B Lightnings are in Italy, taking part in multinational air combat drills. They're designed to test how NATO's newest fighter jets operate together in contested airspace. Exercise Falcon Strike 25 is hosted by the Italian Air Force and runs from the 3rd of November till the 14th. The RAF's F-35Bs are carrying out live fly missions with other 4th and 5th generation aircraft to improve coordination in complex combat environments. The exercise brings together aircraft and crews from Italy, the UK, the United States, France and Greece. 2 RAF Chinook helicopters returned to the UK after helping tackle Cyprus's worst wildfire in 50 years. Crews on a detachment at RAF Akrotiri dropped more than 450 tonnes of water during the summer, replacing the retired Puma as the base's firefighting unit. They're now back at Odium in Hampshire, with the fire season declared over. Squadron leader Alan Rose, officer commanding 1310 flight, said Cyprus is a great place to operate and he's sad to see the time coming to an end, but the fact that they're going home in time for Christmas is a bonus. RAF Music have been busy rehearsing in London in preparation for the Royal Albert Hall Festival of Remembrance. The festival is an opportunity to bring the nation together in reflection and pictures of the band rehearsing have been shared on the Royal Air Force social media account on Facebook. And squadron leader Jim Ashworth, a World War II hurricane pilot who flew in the Far East, has died at the age of 106, with tributes being paid. Described as one of 20 squadron's most distinguished veterans, he faced anti-aircraft gunfire whilst flying in Burma during the war and held many other senior posts before retiring in Canada. That was Reheats for Insider.
I'm AS1 Ben Russell, and this is Under the Hat, where we get to know an aviator in less than a minute. Name you're known by.
I'm Warrant Officer Richard Grimshaw Else, known as Elsie.
What's your profession?
I'm an aircraft technician, mechanical originally, now a Squadron Warrant Officer on 2 Squadron at RAF Lossiemouth.
What's the best thing about your job?
Definitely the people, working with the people.
Hardest part of your job?
Definitely the people. Discipline.
Best location you've served?
Typhoon entry into service at Wharton, I would say. It was back in my hometown, and it was good to work with people that I'd gone through school with.
What bit of luxury kit do you never deploy without?
Definitely my own pillow. Depending where you go, it can be really plush pillows in a hotel or like postage stamps at RAF Leamington.
And what's your proudest moment in the RAF?
Certainly when I got my warrant, I think. So yeah, that was the end game. That was the goal at the start, and that's where I am now.
Thank you for being the latest aviator to take part in Under the Hat.
That's all for this episode of Inside Air. Please give us a review and subscribe on your favourite podcast app, and join us again soon.
You've been listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations. If you're serving in the RAF and have a story for us, please speak to your unit media and communications officer. Inside Air is written and produced for the Royal Air Force by RAF Media Reserves.